Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview, my revisit of Dune Spice Wars. If you're not across it, on this channel I basically look at games out of season from yesteryear, things that I like and I want to shout out. Catch is I generally line it up with a sale on Steam, and today's no exception. So we're looking at Dune Spice Wars. It's from Shiro Games. I think their whole catalogue's on deep sale at the moment, so it's worth checking out. Probably their most high profile game in current times is War Tales, which I think I'm going to revisit on the main channel because they've got new DLC coming out for it. And that's very much warband management, single player. It's very different from this game, but perhaps that's what you've heard of and that's the touchstone you're aware of and maybe even want to check that out, but that's a bit beyond the scope today. Dune Spice Wars is very much a spiritual successor, a sequel in everything but name and theme to Northgard, their other super high profile game that you may have heard of, and that might be enough for you to just drop the video sight unseen and pick this up. This is Northgard 2 in many ways. So, let's lay that on the table. Arguably the biggest difference is it's a little bit narrower, a bit tighter in its scope. It's only 4 player, whereas Northgard, I think you could get up to like 8 or 10 or something like that. But otherwise, almost all the moving parts are the same. There's been refinement and, it does actually stick very thematically to Dune. Off the top of my head, things like having a winter cycle for food storage in Northgard, because that was like medieval Viking theme. You don't really have that here, but you do have essentially a seasonal cycle equivalent in that you have to pay a tax of spice that you've harvested at the end of a term, to the emperor. So it still carries some of those trappings, but thematically it's shifted across. Anyway, let's just assume you don't know anything about Northgard. It was still worth setting it up in case you're a fan. And if you do actually come away from this enjoying what I've told you here and you pick this up, you might even want to look at Northgard. Best I can tell, it still stands up to this day. Oh, and having said all of that, the main reason I'm looking at this is because a couple of my mates rotated back home and we just found ourselves catching up and thought, what are we going to play together? Something we used to play a lot was Northgard. We'd never really played Spice Wars multiplayer. I've chipped away at it over the years and featured it on channels, but I've never had a really good earnest multiplayer sesh, and we lost the whole day to it, and I'm certain we're going to come back to it. It's one of those things you just keep thinking about all the different strategies, what you could have done. It's very complex. There's a very steep learning curve to it, but that's sort of my view, right? There is a single player campaign sort of thing, much like there was in Northgard, and even though I'm more of a single player type gamer, not in this. I have no interest in it here. I would sooner play a skirmish against AI than I would really worry too much about this campaign that they kind of threw together before full release. So there's your framing, there's your trapping, there's your setup. What is Dune Spice Wars? It's a twist, I suppose you could say, on the modern hybridization between RTS and colony management type games. And if you think about it, a lot of colony management-esque games are usually single player. They're not really competitive or competitive friendly. And if we're going to be really honest, a lot of the RTSs that you play in a multiplayer setting or whatever, they're all still using the same cookie cutter model from Age of Empires or StarCraft. In fact, there's a lot of people that still play Age of Empires 2. So as much of nostalgia carries away, the model hasn't changed a lot. And I would argue it's a bit dated, but that also creates this spot in the middle. How do you do a multiplayer game that is de-emphasized when it comes to combat? Like, combat's still a path, that's still a part of it, but what about a financial victory, working stock markets of, in this case it's called Chome, but like the spice market, trying to crash it, trying to push it up, trying to buy low, sell high, or even just buy a majority shareholder. Some people find that boring. Others, are probably with me in going, well, this is a non-violent path to victory in a multiplayer faction management game, not explored very often. Other paths in this are very interesting, like you can assassinate the head of someone's faction. It's very difficult. It requires a lot of lining up, but, I managed to do it yesterday, actually, and it wipes out the enemy faction. You win, right? But it's a very tricky, intrigue-based, sneaky, shifty way to victory. It's quite cool. Again, not usually explored. You have this thing in this called the Landsrad, which is essentially a politicking, the 4 houses come together. There's also the minor houses, which is this AI wild card that they have voting rights. You vote on different things that will change the gameplay, but there are also kind of political positions and seats that you can vote yourself into and try and power block your way to take over all of the government, you know? So there are many, many ways to success, with violence just being a component, a mechanic, a tool in your toolbox, but not the be-all and an end-all. Anyway, this is as polished and wonderful as Northgard before it, with less factions. If you're not across it, actually, Shiro seems to really like adding DLC to their games, but it's a good DLC model. In the case of this and Northgard, it's new factions. And they will often have their own really interesting and unique mechanics that twist on top of the things I just laid out before you. For example, in Spice Wars, right, you have 4 main factions in the core game, all of which are radically different with the way that they are biased towards victory. Like Atreides are very much like negotiators. They're kind of non-violent. They can take over towns and areas without violence at a premium. But, you know, they do really focus on the politicking side of the Landsrat. Whereas the Harkonnens are much more like overworking people to death to get more value out of things, or having kind of glass cannon one-way ticket units that are all damaged but are probably going to die or benefit other dudes from dying. You have the Fremen, and they can do all sorts of weird stuff, cruising around on sandworms across the map and working with Sieches. I mean, everyone can work with Sieches. There's sort of like factions that join you that are very powerful, and there's like a smuggler faction as well, and they're very much about infiltrating black markets. And then you've got a whole bunch of DLC factions that do radically different things. Anyway, look, I don't want to lose the thread and I don't want to make the video too overlong, but in short, the world is split up into these little areas that will have probably some sort of local bonus. A spice field is a rare but obvious one, and everyone will have one right near their base, and you kind of have to tap it straight away because spice is a big part of your economy and your gameplay and being taxed. But there'll be a village associated with each of these regions, much like Northgard before it. So essentially you just cross your dudes in, attack the town, take it over, and then you can build on top of the town. It's pretty simple, but the fact that it has in these cordoned off zones is one of the more unique ways that the map plays out. You have little helicopters you can send around the map to auto-explore and find points of interest. And then with building on these towns, you have different synergies and different building types, some economic, more political, more military. There'll be quirks of the local region of bonuses that it will get from certain building types. You can build like local militia to protect it so you can move your blob around elsewhere. And you'll get attacked by, you know, random raiders from the desert. They'll keep you honest, so the bigger your empire gets, the more you have to look after it. But it still has a bit more of a turtle-centric favor, right? You can build up defenses and raiding against people. As your dudes walk over the open desert and sand, they kind of lose supply, which will turn into health attrition if they run out of that. If they mess around on the sand too long, they'll get eaten by a sandworm. So it is defensive focused. If the enemy's going to try and attack you and take an area, you're going to see them mounting an army on your border and you're going to have time to react to it. So while there's a lot of things going on at any given time and your attention's drawn to 30 different strategies, it is still relatively slow pace. It's not really about APM or what you would normally traditionally associate with an RTS of just being violence and trying to win these fights, my blob versus your blob, micromanaging the little dudes. No, that's only one part of it, and if you want to do it, you can. But again, the wheel turns slowly, and your opponent is likely going to have time to at least build some sort of defense against you trying to bully in and violently take their territory. Meanwhile, he's probably trying to set up to assassinate you or buy out your stock or what have you. It's a really fun game that shines in multiplayer with a bunch of friends, and you can sort of talk a bit of shit in Discord. Single player, there's still value, but you have to really be in love with the core loop. And I would probably honestly say, if you find yourself interested in all of this, but you're definitely only going to play it on your own, right? Your Harold No-Mates in the corner, you may want to dip your toes in Northgard first. I feel like that's had a longer development cycle. There's more DLC and options. The nature of the gameplay loop, I just find it's a little bit more single-player skirmish friendly. This is from my own personal experience playing both games, but admittedly, I've spent less time on this. They both shine in multiplayer and they are the ultimate way to play it, but that would probably be my parting thought before we put a bow on this, is if you are definitely going to be playing it on your own, I'd check Northgard first, or to be honest, even have a look at War Tales. I barely talked about it, but that's single player warband management, and that's excellent as well, but definitely single player focused. Anyway, let's wrap it up there. Team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.